episode 49. Closing in on the big 50. Pretty excited. We're going to have a great big party to celebrate the 50th. We're going to rent out the Monkey Bar in Midtown, New York. Bring in a bunch of celebrities. Brad Pitt, lots of chicks, Sports Illustrated swimsuit models, the whole shot. Yeah, maybe LeBron's going to be there too. Freaking LeBron. I remember I first read his tweet, the whole debacle last week. And I was just like, I disagree with him, but yeah, I guess maybe he's seen it firsthand how this is putting people in danger, whatever. It turns out he was just really bummed out that he was being inconvenienced while he was in Shanghai. That dude's gotta be really, really narcissistic. I mean, he's been told he's the greatest since he's like 11 years old. I gotta believe he is in his own little world to the nth degree. And it's kind of funny, I was talking to a friend of mine, I said, who's his wife? I never hear, I know he has kids, I know he talked about giving them wine at one point, that they'll drink a glass of wine at dinner, and seems like a real family man, and this guy I was talking to, he goes, yeah, it's his high school sweetheart, you gotta believe he's stepping out on her. Not because LeBron's a bad guy, although he apparently it's a very, very bad guy with a real, very sensitive to his public persona, but inside probably a pretty bad guy, and I can't imagine he's being faithful to his wife, with all the women who are probably throwing themselves at him since he was 11. Yeah, maybe he's being faithful, I don't know, but my friend said, yeah, you gotta believe that he said he was gonna marry her. He probably told her, hey, look, man, stuff's gonna happen. It's this way it's gonna be. And I said, I told my friend, I said, I get it. That's kind of what I told Marie, with this podcast. I said, hey, look, babe, things are gonna happen. You got the weekly demon out there, So anyway, been reading Michael Malice's book, The New Right. It came out early this year, and I like Nassim Taleb's principle that he won't read a book till it's been out for at least, I think he said 20 years. He won't read any current books. And I think that's really sound advice. And I typically follow it more or less. But I've just been fascinated by this whole New Right movement. The whole 4chan phenomena just cracks me up. Every time I hear about those idiots, I'm just laughing out loud. Really like the book Kill All Normies, published by that communist press, Zero Books. So I think there's something there, and it's not all hatred. Honestly, it's just the opposite. It's a lot of joking, it's a lot of laughing, it's a lot of poking fun at the left. And the left finds it hateful because they're so filled with hate. Anyone's making fun of them must be hateful as well. Because that's now what these people are. The whole incel, the involuntarily celibate. Young men are bitter, whatever. Yeah, I get that a little bit, but for the most part, this is a movement of mischief and saying screw the established order. And I think there's a lot to recommend it. So anyway, I got the Michael Malice book, and I'm really enjoying it. It's a short book. I'm almost through with it. Couple quibbles. One, they must have rushed this book to press. All sorts of typos. Although it's odd, I'm not seeing them as I move through the book. It's in the earlier chapters I saw them all the time. I bought this book last summer. And it so often happens I take up a book, I might read a third of it and put it down for a while and do something else, then come back and read it. I'm wondering, is there a way that Amazon, because I'm reading it on my Kindle, is there a way Amazon can fix the typos, and then when your Kindle syncs up, it fixes the typos? Because in the first couple chapters, there are all sorts of just bad typographical errors. And now I'm going through the book, I'm not seeing them. So I don't know, I don't know if they fix them. The publisher fixes them and re-uploads new versions and it fixes on your Kindle. I don't know. I'm interested. I don't really care enough to go back and look at the earlier chapters to find those typos, but in retrospect, I would have highlighted them just to go back and see if I could find them again, because it's just fascinating. The first couple chapters that you'd think would get more proofing. We know for a fact that the first half of books get read more often than the last half of books, just by human nature. But anyway, another quibble. people on the new right, they're so freaking ignorant about natural law. And this is the second time I've seen this phenomenon. The first time I've seen it is with Thaddeus Russell, who I really like. I have grave reservations about Thaddeus. But for the most part, I like him. I think he tries to be intellectually honest. And his idea of nature, when like a Catholic or anyone like a traditional type thinker refers to nature, Thaddeus Russell is just like, well, you don't see that in a blade of grass. Grasshoppers don't do that. And I was like, geez, Thaddeus, you don't understand what nature means. And then Michael Malice does the exact same thing, attacking Pat Buchanan. So let me just read here this passage that he just excoriates Pat Buchanan with. Pat Buchanan is talking about AIDS in 1990, back in the 1980s. Supposedly, Pat Buchanan wrote, "The poor homosexuals, they have declared war on nature, and nature is exacting an awful retribution." Unquote. And then Malice is going to just take Pat Buchanan apart for that statement about nature. He says, "Mortgages and cable television, to name two examples, are hardly natural." You talk about how, basically something that's not natural isn't necessarily going to kill thousands or hundreds of thousands like AIDS did. It's like, Malice, mortgages and cable television, to name two examples, are hardly natural. And first off, stylistically, it's like, what the frick? To name two? It's like, he's thinking, hey, if I could spend a lot more time, I could come up with a lot more examples. It's like, frick, Malice, how about the word processor you're typing this on? How about the Kindle I'll be reading this on? What about podcast software? How about 99% of the things that we use in our workday life isn't nature in the sense you mean it? And that's not just a stylistic quibble. I mean, it is a stylistic quibble. It's like, what do you mean to name two? It's like, you can name a billion. But it's not just stylistic. It points out how he has totally missed what Pat Buchanan is saying. And he's totally oblivious to it. And he goes on and says, the higher primates engage in polygyny. He goes on and says, if nature is a standard, then women should be rated to be mothers when they first get their period. So, over and over again, he's just attacking this concept of nature. And he is totally ignorant of the tradition of natural law. When thinkers throughout Western civilizations refer to nature like that, they're referring to, like, the homosexuals declared war on natural law. That's what they're referring to. You can't forget the law portion of it, but because it became such a ensconced way of talking for literally 2,000 years, because it predates Christ, by the way. This goes back to the Stoics and Cicero, the Greek and Roman traditions. They all talked of nature in this sense, and what they mean by it is nature informed by reason. That's what, like, Thaddeus Russell and Michael Malice miss. It's like, gosh, I mean, you guys are so freaking smart. You're apparently very well read. How can you be so freaking ignorant on this point? It'd be like me talking about U.S. history and I have no clue who George Washington is. I'm serious. That's how bad these type of examples are that Thaddeus Russell and Michael Malice use. It's like, no, nature, informed by reason. When people like Pat Buchanan, who's a Catholic and a traditionalist type thinker, when they say nature, that's shorthand for nature informed by reason, unaided by revelation. And that's the whole thing in the Western canon. And again, go back even 100 years ago, the average intellectual would have understood this. They're saying nature means your reasoning ability unaided by revelation. They're not talking about stuff that God tells you. In the Christian tradition, they're saying, no, we're going back to nature as understood by the Stoics. You don't need revelation. So you go back and look at Thomas Aquinas's Summa Theologica. That's him trying to just use nature, natural reasoning, unaided by revelation, to reach the highest truths. Basically, Thomas Aquinas in that marvelous set of books is trying to build an edifice as close to God as he can get it, and then God fills in the rest. So you still got this gap there. Once you go into that gap, now you're getting to the revelation type area, and now you're leaving nature. Now, granted, we're talking nature informed by reason. You have to look at how your body reacts to certain things. So it's not like when he talks about the apes and polygyny, It's not like the natural law thinker would say, that's totally inapt. No, I mean, you have to look at your body, your mind, people around you. You throw all that into this mixer and you use your reason, you start coming up with fundamental human truths. One of which is homosexual activities are freaking twisted. And it's nature that tells you that. I mean, if you're looking just at nature, brutal, beastly nature, well, yeah, homosexual activities are okay. I mean, look at a chimpanzee colony. Man, they pound each other like someone slipped Spanish fly and Viagra into the San Francisco water system. I mean, it's just, if you don't have the nature informed by reason, yeah, all sorts of problems arise, but that's not remotely what Pat Buchanan meant, not remotely what 2,000 years of Greco-Roman Christian tradition meant. And it's just shocking that someone like Malice, who's writing a book and spends like 3 pages attacking Pat Buchanan, they didn't take the time to pick up a philosophical dictionary that would explain this to him. And by the way, I appreciate that when you talk about things like, hey, nature aided by reason, that, that's the standard. That's not a great standard anymore. In this political culture, that really doesn't tell you anything. I mean, things are so upside down, topsy-turvy, especially now in 2019, to say nature aided by reason, that's a really weak standard because it is a subtle thing. I mean, you have to have some quiet. You need to sit down and think about it. You can't get all your truths from internet hyperlinks and the New York Times. It doesn't solve virtually anything like in today's political climate, and quite frankly, probably wouldn't have for 30, 40, 50 years at this point. And I appreciate it's always been very difficult to apply. Even 1,000 years ago, you had these very delicate, sophisticated, detailed thinkers who would disagree on some of the finer points. But here's the thing when you talk about nature, or nature aided by reason, or nature as informed by reason is a better way to put it. One, it does give you a standard. It gives you, at least in your personal life, it gives you a way to think. But then, even when you're dealing with certain political issues, or what have you, it also gives you a standard. A difficult standard to apply, one that takes thought, study, contemplation, yes, but it gives you a standard. Something to grasp onto, something to build upon, something to apply like a ruler. Even if the ruler is kind of, maybe tricky or you can't read the numbers real well on the ruler. It's like, what exactly does it say? At least gives you a starting point. Secondly, because it's so delicate, sometimes difficult to discern, that's why you don't F with it. You don't just throw it out. And what I mean is the tradition's built up over thousands of years through the use of reason. And the whole postmodern movement is dedicated to basically throwing it out because they're saying it's not nature aided by reason. It's just a structure erected by the power elites, like the bourgeois, whatever, to keep their power. And there is no truth at all. Therefore, there is no nature informed by reason. Well, that's where the war is. Okay? It's between like the natural law people and the postmodernists, who I like for some reasons, but when those postmodernist theories get into the hands of the left, they're just an atrocity. I'm podcasting a lot on this, probably in 2020, by the way. But these traditions that build up over thousands of years in the Western tradition, again, using, nature informed by reason, you just don't want to throw them out. You don't disrupt them all of a sudden. If you're a Catholic or you're a Christian, or you have any respect for your forebears, you just don't throw it out. And again, the postmodernists would say, and again, not all postmodernists, I mean, that's as it's been in the hands of the left, would say, well, no, there is no such thing as nature informed by reason. They're all just constructs, societal constructs, and you're thinking within those constructs. So just what you think is tradition, of nature being informed by reason and building up a culture, a civilization, step by step, intricate, that's nothing but a web, like a matrix maybe, a false world or a false set of premises that have built up over the years, and we need to destroy all that to get back to... I'm not exactly sure what they want to get back to. I'm still trying to figure out what the frick the real aim is. Besides killing all white guys. Alright, let's do some lightning segments. I had a magical night Friday night. I really hate using that word magical. But the term mystical doesn't fit it. I guess it's kind of an existential gap type situation. That can kind of fit it, I suppose. But here's a scenario. Since my mom got ill and died on September 22nd, I've been digging out at the office ever since. It's just been awful. 6-day weeks, even working some Sundays, only a couple hours. I'm pretty religious, so to speak, about not working on Sundays. You know, there's that old saying, if you work 7 days in a row, you're really working 12 days in a row, because you go from Monday through the following Friday, so you need to break it off, as no one works 7 days in a row. It's you're working either 6 days in a row or you're working 12 days in a row. So I've always tried to always take Sunday off no matter what. But I've had to work a couple hours on Sundays for the past month, and on top of working, Monday through Friday, often been working in the evenings, and then normally working about 6 hours or so on Saturday. Well, I think that's come to an end. And I stayed late Friday night. I had to go to the local high school football game, but I worked until 7 o'clock Friday. And those last couple hours I was there were really productive, and I was like, frick, I think I'm caught up. Not like really caught up, but on Saturday I ain't working 8 hours. I might work 4. I end up working almost 5, but no matter. At the time on Friday, I'm sitting there thinking, it's, almost time to leave to go to the football game. And it was like 20 after 6, so I poured myself a stiff gin and tonic and worked a little bit more on a file, cleaned up some things, got my email box cleaned up for the first time in like 5 weeks. Every email has been answered or cataloged or whatever. I can see all my emails on one screen. I don't have to scroll down to see what all I'm effing up by not getting to it. So I drank that gin and tonic, and then it's like 2 minutes to 7. I was like, I better start walking over to the football game, poured myself another gin and tonic, and walked out the back door, just in a splendid mood, realizing I think it's over. I think this, the horrible experience of my mom getting ill and dying, and then having just to dig out and work and freaking grind for the past month on top of that, when I was already kind of like emotionally drained, just having to go back to the office. It's just been really hard. And again, I'm not complaining. I'm fortunate, blessed, whatever, to have a lot of clients and whatnot. So again, not complaining, but it has been very hard. And I realized, I think it's over. I think I've climbed this hill, and I'm walking out. I've had one stiff gin and tonic in me. I'm walking out in my hooded jacket. It's my favorite jacket. An old law partner of mine bought it for me. Put my hood up where people don't recognize me. I put on my aftershocks. I fire up the Bill Burr podcast, who's talking with the former drummer of the Black Crowes. And I start walking the mile to the high school. And it was splendid. I'm walking through downtown in my small city. Say like 10,000 people, 11,000. And we have a great downtown. I mean, you don't want to take the red eye in to come check it out. It's nothing like that. But I gotta believe, as far as small downtowns go, we gotta be in the 90th percentile. A downtown movie theater, which you don't see anymore. We have a great bar. Actually, 2 bars, other ones temporarily shut down. We got a handful of retail shops. We have a freaking art gallery. We got the hipster coffee shop. Pretty much got it all downtown, but it's a small downtown. And so I'm walking that 4 blocks or so, listening to Bill Burr, had the alcohol streaming through my veins. I feel like the worst part of it, the office is over, and I think for the first time since my mom's death, I genuinely felt happy. We're starting to see a lot more homosexuals in advertising, but I've never seen any in the Dodge Ram truck commercials. the Chevy, Silverado truck commercials, those He-Man commercials. They have no homosexual men. I don't get it. They even have that theme song from Bob Seger, Like a Rock. And that could be easily adapted Man, did you see Britain's worst pedophile was murdered in prison? This guy is named Richard Huckle, Dick Huckle. And I read the article. I never heard about it, never heard of the guy, but this guy was a freaking monster. He wrote like how-to manuals for molesting children, took pictures of it and sold on the dark web. He gloated about some of his victims who were just shockingly young. This guy's an absolute freaking monster. I mean, and there's someone, this is someone in a Britain prison murdered him with like a homemade knife that was pretty blunt. So it must have been a freaking gruesome death. It's really hard to muster in Christian charity for such a monster. Alright, well, simply impossible. I'm sure it's a deficiency on my part, but I could muster nothing but glee hearing about this freaking monster being killed in prison. And I admit, that's one thing prisoners do well. Prisoners, they like children. They might rape and kill a 97-year-old grandmother. They might rob a bank and shoot a teller in the head. Awful, awful. But they like little kids. These molesters go to prison. These hardened criminals take it out on them. And that's, hey, so human nature. I mean, no matter how buried it is and how cruel you are, I guess some things like the innocence of little kids still shines in your soul, and you're going to take revenge on a monster like that. And hats off to the prisoners who have that little spark of decency left in them to realize monsters like that don't need to live. I talked about listening to that podcast with Bill Burr talking to the Black Crowes drummer. It's pretty good interview. There's something about the Black Crow drummer's delivery, the way he talks, that kind of rubbed me the wrong way, but it was a good interview, really interesting. This guy was talking about in 1995, they were on tour with the Rolling Stones. They're the opening act, and he talked about how the Stones getting off stage and getting out of the stadium was just like absolute like a military maneuver. He goes, they were the Black Crowes, and you were sitting in SUVs or whatever they were, waiting for the concert to end, and he heard like Jumpin' Jack Flash just ending, and then a ton of fireworks go off. And he goes, not just like 2 or 3, but went on for quite a while, a bunch of fireworks, entertaining the crowd. He goes, and then boom, as soon as the fireworks start, he goes, the Rolling Stones, they're piling into this long line of SUVs. Like Mick Jagger had his own SUV with his handlers, and then Keith Richards, and all the Rolling Stones, the band, everything, they all pile in these SUVs, and they get out of there before the fireworks even end. He goes, it's absolutely like military precision. These guys have been doing it for 50 years. Is how exactly, or with how much precision they got out of that scene and got back to the hotel where they partied all night or whatever. Oh, he said that Mick Jagger didn't join them. So I don't know what that's about. I don't know much about Mick Jagger. I do know Keith Richards has done so many drugs that he supposedly has said that when he dies, he wants to be cremated so his friends can smoke his ashes. You know what I hate? I hate cigarettes. Always have since I was a little kid. I had contacts growing up, and a bunch of my extended family smoked, and my eyes would get all red and irritated because my parents' house would fill with smoke, and I just hated cigarettes. When I worked at Kmart, for some reason, freaking cigarette smokers would come in, and they'd finish smoking, and they'd flick their cigarette butt on the sidewalk, and that was this routine. It's like, what? Part of me thinks this whole backlash against cigarette smoking, a lot of it is because just how freaking inconsiderate the cigarette smokers were, even into the 1980s. And it's almost like this is like a well-deserved backlash for you guys just being rude jackasses all those years with your cigarette smoke and flipping your cigarette butts wherever the frick you wanted to. But here's the thing. I hate this anti-cigarette backlash. I mean, when Michigan and other states outlawed smoking in restaurants and bars in particular, I was appalled. Talk about a shocking intrusion into the private sphere. Yeah, I know you're open for business, but I walk on the public all the time. I mean, that bleeding the public and private is wholly false. I mean, it's your private business. You can do with it whatever you want. And if you want to allow smoking. If people don't want to be there, then they don't need to come there. And if non-smoking is such a great idea, then open a non-smoking bar. And you can make a killing. And I realized, by the way, for me personally, the no smoking, it's great. I mean, I don't like being around cigarette smoke. But my personal preference not to be around cigarette smoke shouldn't let me, acting through the state, whatever, dictate what a private business does. But anyway, put that aside. What I've also come to really like is the smell of cigarette smoke, the stray cigarette smoke. So that Friday night when I'm walking out of the office, some dude, we cross paths. He's walking towards me. I'm walking towards him. We just kind of nod and say hi to each other. I'm holding my gin and tonic, and he's holding a cigarette. And I got a whiff of that cigarette smoke, and I don't know. I don't know if it was nostalgia or what it was, but I was like, man, I just love the smell of that cigarette smoke. Again, I don't want it in my car. I don't want it in my office. But to smell it in the open air like that, it was just splendid. It was just one of those little things that I thought, that's a great smell. And I felt bad, I figured that dude's probably embarrassed. He looked like a respectable guy. Probably that guy's probably embarrassed because I saw him smoking a cigarette. Like maybe I caught him masturbating or something. I was just like, dude, don't be embarrassed, man. I loved getting a whiff of your cigarette smoke. Absolutely loved it. A great quote I heard over the weekend. Rouse Douthat said, if you don't like the Christian right, you're really not going to like the post-Christian right. I guess he said that a while back. Pretty funny. Podcast recommendation sent to me by a listener. The Symbolic World. Might be the symbolic word. I think it's the Symbolic World. I've only listened to 2 podcasts, liked them both. He has one up right now on The Joker, the movie The Joker, which I really liked. But this guy pointed out a ton of stuff about the Joker that I had no clue. I felt like I'm like a freaking imbecile watching this movie. And this guy points out all the symbolism in the Joker movie. I was just absolutely love the podcast. So I think this is going to become a regular for me. At a minimum, I know I can recommend the Joker podcast. Go listen to it. By the way, if you haven't seen the movie though, and you're going to, don't listen to this. It's just one great big spoiler alert. I want to talk a little bit more about this whole idea of a structure, because it's a fascinating parallel with this movie that came out in 2017 that I absolutely loved, called The Death of Stalin. You go check it out if you haven't seen it yet. Marx was a proto-structuralist. Before the structuralists came into existence in the 20th century, Marx was already writing about the concept that there is like no reality, no nature informed by reason. He would say you have nature informed by economic processes. Marx was a materialist. He believed in no spirituality whatsoever. He thought all history, all reality were just structures, economic structures, and that we are formed and fashioned by economic structures. For him, all was the economy, how we survive, how we live. And then he'd say that the economy, the economic forces, the way that I don't know how to put it, but the way your economy is run, that informs how you think. So he would say that the U.S. Constitution, and a guy named Charles Beard, an historian in the probably 1940s, 1950s, basically what he said is the U.S. Constitution wasn't like an idea of the founding fathers and political ideas coming down from John Locke. He'd say, no, the U.S. Constitution was erected to further the economic interests of those who fashioned it, and not even necessarily on purpose. The Marxist type thinker would say, no, they were just informed. They were nature informed by economic reality. Again, not nature informed by reason, and sure as hell not informed by revelation. But nature, as informed by the economic structure, caused them to put up a constitution like that. And again, Charles Beard is like one of the forefathers in that area, if you want to go read him. He has some interesting things to say. And again, it's not so much that they did it on purpose to further their economic self-interest, but that is how they had to think, because that was economic reality at the time. So it's economic reality informs everything in the Marxist theory. And then on top of that, on top of that economic structure, you have this superstructure. And that's all the culture on top of that economic substructure, or that economic base structure. You have this superstructure, which is our culture. So Marxists would say there are economic reasons that Americans like football, and maybe third world countries like soccer. And I'm kind of making this up, but the reason would go something like this. Football with all its rules and stop and play and reviewing to make sure they get things absolutely right. That's very similar to the American economic reality of making sure you have ironclad contracts, that people follow through on the business deals, because America has always been on the economic forefront, and people came here to get ahead. And by getting ahead, what you mean is they came here to make a lot of freaking money, become very wealthy. And that's kind of why America is what it is. And that's why America loves football, and the rest of the world, who's not quite so avaricious or, greedy, however you want to put it, not quite so economically motivated, at least not in the way the Americans are, that's why they like soccer. That's how Marxists might break it down. And again, I'm basically fabricating that example, but I think it's apt. So again, to the Marxist, there is no nature informed by reason. There is only nature informed or warped or pushed around or molded by the economic realities. And therefore, and this part's crucial, to the Marxists, that economic structure can be changed. That is the revolution. Okay, we can change that economic structure, and then nature would be then informed by whatever is put into its place. And therefore, that structure and the superstructure put on top of it has to be basically torn down. Shift over to that movie, The Death of Stalin. You're seeing it. You're seeing the Great Terror. Well, the Great Terror actually refers to what Stalin did to the kulaks and kill him in the Ukraine. But you look at the Gulag in Siberia, the tens of millions that Stalin killed, this terror society he had, and then the buffoonery next to it, because it created this absolute false universe, or this false society, but yet is juxtaposed against human nature informed by reason. Because again, the economic theory of Marx is bunk, although I think there's a lot there that can be mined. And that's pretty interesting. I'm always interested like in his theory of alienation. I think there's something there. But for the most part, this idea that there is no reality is just economic structures that make you think there's reality, and therefore we gotta tear down what you think is reality. But yet, I will say, and I think most sane thinkers would agree, no, there is reality. And so the Marxist system, like you saw in Russia under Stalin, when you tear down all that stuff to create the new man or whatever it is you're up to, you still have human nature informed by reason. And now you have these two, I don't know what you call them, two systems or two realities. You got the Marxist reality and you got the real reality next to each other, and then they collide and they come in contact with each other. That's what you're seeing throughout this movie, The Death of Stalin. It's human nature as informed by reason next to human nature being pushed around by the Marxist system of tearing down reality informed by reason. It's really funny, and then you see those two juxtaposed and constantly colliding, and you get the buffoonery that just makes The Death of Stalin a freaking masterpiece, in my opinion. Alright, that's a wrap for this week. Please follow us on Twitter, check out the Facebook page, go to the blog, check out udemonpodcast.com. There's all sorts of information over there that you might find interesting. As always, thanks for listening.